I recall J.B. D'Souza because when I joined the service, he was what is known as the resident Under Secretary to the Government of Bombay. Resident Under Secretary means right on the top of the old Secretariat, he had an apartment. I think when I went there, we were 6 of us. 2 allotted to Maharashtra and rest of them elsewhere. We were greeted very warmly. Of course, those were prohibition days. We had all cold drinks, Limbabari, soda water. And none of us were really knew what was even beer in those days because of the prohibition. Then he greeted us very warmly. We had dinner, and then we suddenly found a lot of telegrams coming in, one after another. So we said, what are these telegrams for? He said, orders are that the secretaries to government should not be disturbed in their sleep. Therefore, all telegrams come to me. There are 2 typists below who type. And then they show it to me, and I decide when to show it. If it is an emergency, like law and order, I wake up the Home Secretary and tell him that, look, this is a telegram. And nobody complains. That is how I came to know Bain D'Souza. He's no more with us. But I'm very good. Feel rather nice that Nilima decided to have this memorial lecture almost 16, 17 years after his demise. And I do not have to say much about him because there are others, including his brother, who is going to speak about it. So may I again welcome you all, and we look forward to Gautam Patel delivering the speech.
I am Ravi, Mr. J.B. D'Souza's eldest child. I don't live in Bombay, so I think many of you perhaps may not know me as well as other members of my family here who are also here, my brother and his family and my mother. On behalf of the D'Souza family and citizens of peace, I welcome you all to the first J.B. D'Souza Memorial Lecture today. This day today also happens to be my father's 90th birthday. My father was a multifaceted personality, and he played many roles in his long life of 86 years. Apart from his most well-known role of a civil servant who was committed to the ideas of public service, he was also a sailor, a naval officer, a city planner, an urban development expert, a hospital manager, a principal of an academic institution, and he played other roles also. To each of these assignments, he brought a very clear head, very sound administrative and management skills, and a willingness to confront problems and situations head-on and very often hands-on. The photograph you see behind me is an example of this, his approach to work. If you see the picture behind me, it is my father with firemen of the Bombay Fire Brigade. When he was commissioner, he asked to accompany the fire brigade on some of its calls to see firsthand for himself what it meant to be, what the fireman's life was like. And he also visited their quarters, and I remember going with him also, seeing some of these, the firemen, the Bombay Firemen Brigades, their quarters and the fire stations. Now, having said this, there was also another aspect of him which all of us used to see underlying all these qualities that he had. He had an immense appetite for extremely hard work, and this we this was something that was there all the time. All of us saw it. But at the same time, in spite of all this, with all these things, I think he lived a full, complete, and a very successful life.
My task this evening is not easy, and that befits the man we honor today. Joseph Bain D'Souza, Bain to his family and friends, could himself be more than somewhat intimidating, especially to those who did not immediately have the measure of his ethical and moral centeredness. My own association with him spanned decades. My memories from my childhood are of a tall, lean, quiet and apparently stern man, somewhat forbidding, with the watchful look of a bird of prey. It is perhaps ironic that I am here today, for decades ago, my sense was that in his presence it was better not to speak at all. He wasn't actually like this, but that knowledge came only much later. When I began my practice in law, I got to know him differently, as one who lent his name to the many causes in which he believed: riots, urban issues, intolerance. If asked to describe him in one word, of the many that spring to mind, I choose this one: unflinching. It embraces many things: dedication, commitment, courage and fortitude, unwavering fidelity to one's principles, clarity of thought and vision, breadth of mind and heart, above all, a vision of justice in its broadest and most elemental sense. Bain's standards defined his life and himself. There was no distinction he made between his public persona principles and the ones he applied to his home and family. There are near legendary stories at a personal level of the many sacrifices he chose to make. It is important I begin here because once considered norms that required no special mention, these are the very qualities that are today on the brink of extinction, and nowhere is this more true than in the field to which Bain dedicated his entire life, public administration. In the opening chapter of Shantaram, it does not much matter whether you believe everything or even anything in the book, Gregory David Roberts describes his reaction at first flying into Mumbai. What kind of government, he writes, treats its own people like this? That, in a sentence, captures the disconnect between those who are governed and their governors. In Bain's times, it was entirely possible to not only draw into public service for a specific purpose persons who are not career civil servants, but there was also willingness to learn and to listen. How might we best optimize bus routes, for instance, or what steps we might legitimately take to address the problem of augmenting water supply or affordable housing. In March this year, hearing some case I cannot now remember, I found buried in the mountain of papers on my desk a document from exactly 6 decades earlier, 1959. It was a lease signed by the then collector of Bombay, one J.B. D'Souza, IAS. It was an utterly routine document, one of 2 such I have recently been privileged to see. The other was an even older lease signed by my father's father when he was Municipal Commissioner. The 1959 lease Bain signed had a routine renewal clause. I believe he would have been mortified by what the present administration was seeking to do to that formal and legally binding document. It sought to disown the renewal clause altogether. In a society that strives to be democratic, transparent, and governed by law and accountability, is there any space at all for the bleak and distressing and dangerously authoritarian worldview of V.S. Naipaul's opening lines in A Bend in the River? The world is what it is. Men who are nothing, who allow themselves to become nothing, have no place in it. The purpose of every functional democratic republic is precisely the reverse. It is that public servants must remain forever precisely in the service of men who are nothing and who have allowed themselves to continue to be nothing. only by virtue of being a citizen and of being alive, no person is ever nothing. This is the declining arc of our civic society from Bain's time to now. Let me be clear. I am not pillorying all civil servants. I am not. To put it bluntly, this country is now being run by bureaucrats. Correction, it is being ruled by bad bureaucrats. This will not change unless we have more and more persons from civil society willing to enter public service, clear in their minds that in being a public servant, the emphasis is always, first and last, on being a servant. What we need is more Bain D'Souza's.
My father found most of his jobs fascinating, and often it was the little sidelights. And one of those my brother mentioned was the fireman. But he also loved the eccentricities of his job. And he kept a file all his life, all through his career, called Howlers. And it was filled with strange letters he got throughout his career. And I want to just read out to you a couple of lines from one that came to him when he was general manager of the BEST. And those lines are to somebody who lived on Slater Road, and he wrote to my father. He said, I had the misfortune to travel by route number 130 this day. And when I got myself seated on the left-hand last but one seat on the right flank of the upper deck, I had to immediately get up with immense pain because a pointed nail was functioning like a dagger, manifesting an attitude of scant respect of your BEST towards the public. He had a file full of these letters, he treasured them. And I like to think that, Gautam, that you are similarly fascinated by the eccentricities of the job, of your job, and the eccentricities that it must bring you. And that's one more reason that we are so glad that you gave this first J.B. D'Souza Memorial Lecture.